Hi everyone, I'm Daniel Hoffman-Zindel, Executive Director at One Iowa Action.
And I'm Keenan Crow, Director of Policy and Advocacy at One Iowa Action.
I believe this is our final legislative video, so thanks for sticking around this entire session with us and checking out our updates. We're going to talk about some of the recent legislation that we've been monitoring. So let's start out with vouchers. Keenan, you want to tell us a little bit about where that ended?
Yeah, absolutely. So this weekend was kind of rapid fire.
Yeah.
There were a lot of bills brought up for debate Thursday, Friday, and Saturday as well. And so we were monitoring all of the different budgets for vouchers, the education bill. There were actually a couple different education budget-related bills that came through, the tax bill, which was dropped on Saturday. And the only thing that we actually saw that resembled vouchers, and it's not vouchers, I want to be very clear about this, this is a slightly different system, is the system that they've set up to expand 529Cs. Now, 529C is a specific section of the tax code, and so I won't leave it there. We'll actually flesh that out a little bit.
Yes.
What it allows people to do is it allows people to save money for college, for their kids, or for themselves, and defer tax payments on that. So it's effectively in a tax-advantaged accounts. Taxpayers help reimburse for those. What this new plan did in the tax bill was it takes that college savings account and it also allows K through 12 folks to use that for private education tuition dollars. So that it can essentially create tax-advantaged accounts for their private educations. Now, this is still taxpayer money going to those institutions that we said were acting in discriminatory ways, right? So this is not an ideal thing, but it's also not vouchers. So it's somewhere in between. You know, it's definitely not a good thing, and we're not happy about it, but it is better than vouchers.
Yes.
So that's where we're at on vouchers. There also was a whole lot of movement, and you'll remember our action alert about this, on the sex ed stuff. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So the sex ed, which was part of the Health and Human Services budget, essentially defunded Planned Parenthood and other abortion providers to access public funding to provide sexuality education. So there's a couple of programs, Personal Responsibility Education Program and the Community Adolescent Pregnancy Prevention Program. So those were two specific ones that they essentially eliminated any abortion provider from accessing public funding to provide sexuality education. So we registered against it because a variety of reasons. One, Planned Parenthood's been a leader in the LGBTQ movement here in Iowa. They offer LGBTQ inclusive services, and they also provide medically accurate, age-appropriate, research-based, and LGBTQ inclusive sexuality education. So it just made sense for us to make sure that we weighed in on this, and essentially it would prevent Planned Parenthood from doing that. Not only did it do that, but it also said any education that does go on that is publicly funded through these two institutions, or through institutions, they could not even refer people to Planned Parenthood or even reference their website, even if people asked about specific services. And we know that Planned Parenthood provides LGBTQ inclusive healthcare services like hormone replacement therapy and other services that are specific to the LGBTQ community. So it really would have had a harmful effect on the LGBTQ community. So,
and any competent provider would want to provide young people with all the resources available, right? I mean, we shouldn't be picking and choosing what references people can make. That seems kind of absurd. So what happened with that?
So you helped us. We sent out action alerts to contact legislators, and we were happy to see when the updated HHS budget came out on Saturday. It's a whirlwind, so I think it was Saturday.
I can't even remember which one went when.
But they eliminated that portion of it. So essentially, we got what we wanted, which was great on that end, and you all were able to help us make sure that they removed that language. So now Planned Parenthood can continue to provide that important comprehensive sexuality education that's LGBTQ inclusive.
Yep, absolutely.
Which was great. So let's talk tax bill.
Yes.
That's still something we're...
Absolutely. We are still muscling through this tax bill. You know, one of my concerns is specifically with the process that the tax bill was rolled out with. The tax bill was released on Saturday afternoon. Now, they had released a previous bill, essentially, that they knew that they weren't going to run so that it would be eligible for debate in time. And then they did what's called a strike-after amendment. So essentially what a strike-after amendment does is it takes the entire bill that they had already introduced, strikes all the language, and replaces it with completely new language. So it's effectively a totally new bill with the same bill number. What they did was they introduced that strike after amendment, and within about an hour voted that through the Senate floor.
Yeah.
So I hadn't even had time to get through reading the bill by the time that it was advanced. That's incredibly dangerous because if there had been something worse than the 529Cs in there, and we would have probably even liked to have commented on the 529Cs had we known that they were in there at the time, right? But if there would have been something really dangerous, citizens wouldn't have had an opportunity to comment on that. And I'm, withholding judgment. There may still be some dangerous stuff in there, and there may be some dangerous stuff outside of the stuff that directly impacts the LGBTQ community too. In those cases, when we're massively changing an entire system, those are the times that we need the most public input, not the least public input. And so, I'm a little disappointed with the way that particular bill was moved through. I think a lot of the other bills this session we got time to comment on, and just, like with the sex ed bill, when we get time to comment on it, sometimes people reevaluate, and sometimes people's priorities change when the flaws in those bills come to light. We didn't have time to illuminate anything in this bill, and I think that's a problem moving forward. I would hope that folks get more of a chance for input on these major systemic changes.
So more to come on that. We'll share details as we find out about them. Well, you've been at the Capitol a lot the last few months, so let's do maybe a quick high-level overview. We've had a quite successful year when it comes to things that we've weighed in on. So.
Absolutely. So I think aside from the 529C portion, that was really the only thing that we were really strongly against that passed through. In terms of our defensive game, I think we did pretty well. We saw several different bathroom bills introduced this session. They have not advanced at all. We saw several different versions of the religious exemption legislation advance. They did not make it through the final cut. There are some good things that went through. The suicide prevention bill, where educators have to talk about suicide prevention, or at least have to receive some training on it. It's kind of remedial, and we would have liked to see a little bit more improvement on that before it passed. But it's certainly an improvement over the status quo, which is there's no training at all until that bill had gone through. There were some things that we would have liked to see advanced. The needle decriminalization, that got through its subcommittee but didn't end up advancing through the Senate, and therefore didn't advance through the House either. That was kind of disappointing. There was also an attempt to bring that back within the budget bill discussions and within the opioid crisis bill, or the opioid crisis solving bill, purportedly. They tried to tack that back in. That was unfortunately ruled out of order. So that is something that is on our horizon for next year. We will be continuing to push for that. It's good public policy. It saves people's lives. It prevents folks from getting diseases that they could have otherwise not gotten. And so that's going to be something that's on our list. Aside from that, there were a whole bunch of other small things, little tiny adjustments to the Civil Rights Act that were all shot down. There were attempts to make the Supreme Court into a supermajority. That was shot down. All sorts of attempts to alter the composition of the judicial nominating commissions, all gone. So it's been a whirlwind of a year. I think in terms of making sure that bills didn't pass that we didn't want to see, we've done pretty well. In terms of getting bills to pass that we did want to see, we haven't done so well. And I hope that we can improve that next year with a little more support and a few more voices in the mix.
So on all, pretty good year.
Yeah, pretty good.
For the most part.
Yep.
Thank you to all of you who have helped us. We've asked you to weigh in on a lot of things, whether it was contacting your legislator, on specific action alerts. So thank you for reaching out to your legislators and sharing your voice. And I don't think we could have done it without some of our coalition partners as well. So
yeah, absolutely.
We want to make sure that we mention some of them and thank them for collaborating with us on a lot of different projects this past year.
Yeah, and it hasn't been a great year for everything. It has been. True. We, as an organization, have been relatively successful in the things we weighed in on.
That's right.
But there have been some nasty things that have happened, and so I don't want to make it seem like we're turning a blind eye to those.
Correct. Duly noted.
Yes.
So now what? So for One Iowa Action specifically, we are working on a new strategic plan with our board, and that will be unveiled this summer at some point. So you'll be able to see where we're headed as an organization. But some of the things that you will see, we are considering some endorsements to help kind of weigh in on the election process and making sure that we elect LGBTQ inclusive candidates and people that are going to serve our constituency to the best of their abilities.
Yeah. We know these attacks are not going to stop, right?
That's true.
All the stuff that we saw this year, we're probably going to see next year too. And so we need folks to stay in the fray, keep speaking up, and we will be doing everything we can and looking at all of our options to try to make sure that happens as well. Today
is the start of early voting, so that is part of the process, making sure that all of you vote.
And so today is May 7th for those of you who are watching this in the future.
Yes.
Early voting has already started for you.
How do they go about doing early voting?
They need to go to their county auditor's office. That's the surest bet. They can also check their county auditor website. There may be other satellite locations depending on what county they're in or what area they're in that are available for them. But definitely the county auditor is going to be the best source of information to go find out where you can early vote, and their office is definitely a location.
And this early voting specifically is for the primary, so you'll still need to vote come November. There'll be a lot of elections for you to weigh in and share your voice. But anything else you want to add for this?
If you are going to vote in the primary, you do have to be registered for a particular party, so make sure that you are aware of that going into the primary. If you show up as an independent, you will not be able to vote in your respective primary, and that'll be kind of inconvenient for you. So keep that in mind. Iowa is a closed primary state.
Well, thank you, Keenan, for all your hard work at Capitol this year. It's been a pretty good year.
It has.
We'll keep watching.
Absolutely.
I'm sure there'll be some things that will
And
happen.
there's always administrative rules and municipal codes and all sorts of other things to look at as well. Just because legislative session is over does not mean our policy and advocacy work is finished in any way or is even slowing down or stalling.
Yes.
It is forging ahead, so stay tuned.
Thanks for tuning in, and thanks for all of your help this last legislative session.